Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen. All right. Okay. So it is time now, yes, for the dreaded answering the viewer mail. Our first question comes from Cole Duchette, and it says, "What's Joe's favorite song?" All right, this was a tough one. And I thought about it for a long time, and I'm positive it's Come Junkie by the Genitorturers. And the reason I think this is because I once said, "Oh, Come Junkie by the Lords of Acid," and Joe was like, so strangling, like, "You're not a man, you're not a man, it's by the Genitorturers." And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So, yeah, so that's mine. So I think, Dan, what is Joe's favorite song?
I'm going to say probably a Bob Dylan song.
Come Junkie by Bob Dylan.
If Bob Dylan did Come Junkie, I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
Joe would like that. So that version of it.
Okay.
All Along the Watchtower or something.
All right. And Dean, do you have a guess?
Well, I was going to say that if it was a song, like his favorite song, it's a little vague. It's like, is it a favorite Milkman song or is it a favorite song of all kind? I'll answer for Joe, like one of my favorite songs, and maybe it's one of his, I don't know, is What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding by Nick Lowe. He probably likes that one. I don't know if it's his favorite song.
It's a great song. I love that song. My favorite song.
Oh, wait a minute.
I guess
Moving
I
on
get to say
the next question. Oh, wait, Joe, you want to answer?
I don't get to say
Yeah, Joe has to answer it.
It'd be great if you didn't answer.
I'm going to be wrong. Yeah. My favorite song is, it's by Johann Sebastian Bach. It's Sheep May Safely Graze. There's a German title for it. I don't know how to say it in German. But,
is it a choral piece or is it just an instrumental
piece?
It's a
choral. Well, I like it as a soprano soloist, but there's so many. The reason I sang it in choir in high school, and I liked it so much I went out and got it on vinyl in a collection or whatever. But it wasn't my favorite song back then, but over time it became my favorite song because I got rid of that vinyl. I think in 2016 I got rid of all my classical for some reason, thinking, oh, I have so many CDs, I don't need it. And then that song I wanted to go play, and I realized, oh, I don't have that on any of my box CDs. It's a cantata that I don't have. And then I had to go search for it, and I found that there's so many different versions of it, and I became obsessed by it. And I found the German one, I wanted an English one, I didn't want a chorus, I didn't want instrumental ones, and I finally got one that was close to what I had.
Okay.
That's why.
Sounds good. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. That'd be weird if you put on the German language version and start going, "You're not a very good guitar player. Perhaps you should not be playing guitar."
Well, I don't know.
It's like grandfather of that nasty German guy.
I actually did a little research on it this morning and found out it was written by Bach and his librettist for someone's birthday, for the Duke Christian of someplace in Germany. I don't know. So.
Can't say Duke without me thinking of Escape from New York. You're the Duke, #1. It's a great movie. If you've never seen Escape from New York, you can drop off the call now and go watch it.
That's what they believe. That's what people believe on the internet. I don't know if it's true.
Great movie.
Okay. All right.
Next
moving
question.
on to next question is from First Name Last Namerson, which I love. And this one I actually know a tiny bit about this one. And then I'll tell you what we should have done. The question is, what's up with the coordinates on some of the tracks on Metaphysical Graffiti? From my perspective, I had not slept for like 36 hours, and I got this email. Like, for me, when an album is done, it's done. Like, it should maybe sit on a shelf for 5 years and be gone. The world would be a better place if Sgt. Pepper, if nobody could listen to it. But so I move on with things. So I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. So I think that Joe and Dean were looking for a way to change it somehow. And I love Atlas Obscura. Atlas Obscura is one of my favorite sites, and I like their random feature. So I was hitting, like, trying to grab really morose random things, like graves, of Falkland War victims and stuff. And I remember like shooting it off and saying, like, I have to go to sleep now. And then I think I woke up 12 hours later and they mapped out the coordinates. Gentlemen, is that correct?
Well, yeah, that's pretty much how it happened. Dean asked me to help him put metaphysical graffiti online on the digital thing. This service, we got a DistroKid or something. So when I went to do it, they wouldn't let you have tracks that didn't have any titles. Mm-hmm. So I said, I sent out an email. Do we want to call it the Earl? Do we want to call it Untitled 1, Untitled 2, Untitled 3, or whatever? And Rodney wrote back, why don't you just use map coordinates? And so, right? Isn't that what happened? And I said, okay.
Why would you listen to me? Why would you listen to me?
Coordinates up and then did it. I mean, I wanted to get it online. And I just chose some places, I think. That were.
I think they had significance, though.
Yeah, sort of.
Okay. You don't want to.
Yeah.
Dean chimed in too, dude.
We had a brief discussion about it. They're coordinates to places that feature in the Milkmen history in the past. By the way, what
I would have done now, I would have made them all places that Dan had lived from his childhood up to now. So when he saw it, it would freak him out. Like, I'm being tracked. I mean,
I have a little sidebar here. That phone call was from my father telling me, we had a discussion about John Cage tonight at dinner. Did you know that John Cage was into the research and selling of mushrooms? Did you know that?
I'm not shocked.
Like psilocybin mushrooms, or
I don't know. I think he was well versed in the knowledge of the mushroom species and variations and varietals. But anyway, I digress.
It's not really a phone call unless it's from Max and Eve from MTV's Catfish. And I'm putting it out there and I'm leaving it there. Every time the phone rings, let it be Max and Eve. Hi, it's Max and Eve from MTV's Catfish. Why are you calling yourself Susan online?
Okay.
Tricking men into sending you money. All right. The next question. Did we all get through that? Dan, what would you have done if we'd asked you for the names for that? Dan's like a kind of space capsule adjusting.
I like the idea of the different places I've lived, but you would have to select how many were there? There was like
I think there were four.
How many?
Have you lived 4 different places?
I've lived many more than 4 different places. Yeah.
Okay. Well, next time we'll track you down.
I mean, I had nothing to do with that record, but I guess, yeah.
Hey, I had nothing to do with Punk Rock Girl, but a check shows up in the mail every now and then. Just saying.
Well, I don't get that.
Maybe
I'll send you
we should have chosen locations that Dave Blood lived or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, or mine was better. Mine were all morose. Well, not better. I mean, I'm fine with that. But mine were all these morose. So people would have looked at me, what the hell is wrong? Like, mine is stuff that goth bands, like the Genitorturers, would have turned down. It's like too dark. Okay, I'm going to get to the next question eventually. All right. What do your families think of you being in the band or your music? Have they ever been embarrassed? I've been embarrassed by my family, not the opposite. Have they ever been embarrassed by your antics? And what does Rodney's dad think about being on the cover of Beelzebubba? So I'll take the last one, the last part of that first. My dad's awesome with being on the cover of it. He signed them for people. My dad's a really confident guy, so it's not like, oh, I'm looking goofy or whatever. He liked being on the cover of that. My parents were always early rock and rollers. They were dancers on Bandstand. They loved early, like really, really heavy rock. So they were absolutely fine. There's nothing. The other thing about being on the cover of Beelzebubba, my dad managed to sell that bush hog tractor in the background for like 10 times what it was worth. He actually sold it to a Dead Milkmen fan. So he was happy with that. Again, the first time my dad ever told me he was proud of me, my parents had gone and listened to us play on WXPN. And my mother's like, your father wants to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble for something. And my dad was like, son, that was really, really good. That, it was really brave of you, I guess because of my singing style. And I'm really, really proud. And then he said, let Joe sing more. But that's what everybody thinks. All right. So Joe is next in line. It's Joe, Dan, and then you, Dean.
Well, my parents were supportive. At least at first they let us play in the basement every now and then. They didn't like the music. They were but they didn't care. They came to see one show and they said that was enough. They didn't come to see anymore. But they still wear T-shirts, and my dad still has a soul rotation cap, and so they're supportive. I don't remember them being embarrassed by anything. They didn't think it was going to be such a career thing. They're a little concerned when I decided I was going to quit my job at the library and go on tour, but it all worked out.
Dan, you're up. Your folks ever been okay with you being in bands?
My parents are always supportive of it. They knew I was a fan of the band, and they probably weren't. But they did come to the Dave Blood shows in 2004. My sister was there. She was pregnant. And actually what's funny is when my nephew was born, he would always like calm down when Punk Rock Girl was on. He would always stop crying and just kind of, he's gonna be.
That was the first song we played, right?
Yeah. He's gonna be 15.
Well, he probably gets a check from it.
He was the one. Remember, we did that video for him to do the jazz band.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
For the clarinet to be in the jazz band. Well, no, obviously none of that.
Did he get in?
Who knows now? Then nobody does anything anymore.
Oh, well, that's true. Sorry about that.
But yeah, my parents were supportive. My sister made like a scrapbook for me after that. Everybody thought that was it, so they thought, wow, that was really cool. You got to do that. And then, 4 years later, they were like, oh, okay, well, you have kids. You have 2 kids? No. Yeah, and I'm going to have a third.
Now, were they supportive back when you were in the Genitorturers? Because I think that's why Joe likes
Not so much, yeah. They were. My mom's Canadian, so,
Well, that explains it.
Oh, now you're in the Genitorturers, eh? I don't know.
Hey, we're going out to Prince Edward Island to catch the Genitorturers, eh? Oh, that's good. We're going to bring Gordy.
You know what?
We're going to bring Gordo and Gord.
What's interesting, Dean, I don't know what you've experienced with the other end of it with Victor, but I know that my kids, as they've gotten older, some of their teachers, when they have found out, are like, what? That's really cool. And then I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I'm like, oh, your teacher, it's my age. Okay.
Yeah. Victor's come home and said, oh, my science teacher really loved you guys back in.
Yeah.
Yeah, my parents were pretty supportive throughout. And, we used to rehearse in the basement up in Sellersville, PA, too. And in fact, some of the early cassettes that we put out were recorded in that basement on my 4-track. And there was a little trepidation, I think, when I said that I was, like Joe, quitting my job to go on tour in the summer of 1985. But they've been very supportive throughout the years. It's funny, Joe, you said your dad still has his soul rotation hat
with the cowl on it.
Yeah, my dad has the painter's cap from Yule Dance. I think it was Yule Dance to Anything. Do you remember those?
Vaguely.
Yeah, the painter's caps or whatever. He still has that. He's a big hat guy, so he wears that.
I don't remember 11 o'clock this afternoon.
Right? I know. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, generally they've been very supportive. Rodney, something I also remembered about your dad in the photo shoot. Remember he smoked that cigar and got really sick?
I was hoping that wouldn't come up. All right, my father has. I've never smoked a cigarette. My father, my mother don't smoke. I grew up not smoking. My dad, and also my dad is, if he has 2 beers, he gets silly. He's a big guy, and he smoked this cigar, and I was like, Dad, I don't think you should do that. Because I had a roommate that did chewing tobacco, and I did some of that, and I turned green and did an exorcist. So I said to my dad, you should do that. And I'm pretty sure he waited till after you guys left, he was cool about it. And then he threw up for about half an hour straight from the cigar. Yeah. Kids, don't smoke. Don't. All right, I'm going to, let me see, where are we here? We're running a little bit out of time, so I'm going to jump down to one and then loop back to the other. This is either from John Gentile or John Gentili. I know people have pronounced their last name both ways. And excuse my belching, I'm drinking, I've got the Voodoo Ranger. And it says, here's a question for next week. We'll answer that next week. Okay, that means this week because it was sent in a week earlier. What's the key to a great live performance? Okay, John, this is something I tell young people all the time. These are the 3 P's, okay? Preparedness, promptness, politeness. And I know that doesn't sound like something from a punk rock band. Preparedness, you rehearse and you practice. Rehearsing is with the band, practicing is at home. I know some people like to go see jam bands. I would feel guilty if I charged you to see us practice. So, and a lot of that is, I know I've worked a lot of minimum wage jobs. I don't have a lot of money myself. If I'm going to ask you to give me money for something, I'm going to work really, really hard at it. So that is, yeah, the preparedness. Learn what you're doing. Work out that set list. I keep, like Rodney Dangerfield would take and save little index cards with each joke he told and the response it got. I have every set list, so I can kind of tell you this got this response here, this got this response there. It's a good way to stay sober after a show. Fill out those little things. And then promptness. If be there early to, at the very least, on time for a sound check, because there are other bands waiting in line behind you who would like to do that, and nobody wants to wait. We've had to wait for rock star people to come out and plink at things and take their time, and they go, hey fellas, let's try that one we were working on before. Sound check is not where you work on new material. Sound check's where you go out there, you get the sound that you want, you make sure everybody's okay, because people are paying. Also, what I do is, since I'm running around on stage, and if you run around on stage, if you're front of band, come in, listen, you're going to want to hear this, okay? This is what you do. You run around you don't stand still for sound check. You run around on that stage. You'll find all the dead spots, so you know, okay, if I want to hear the bass, I don't stand here. I stand here. If I want to, if I find a spot in the stage with a little bit of give in it, then depending on how much give, you can either spring off of that. So if you see the photos of me where I'm a little bit up in the air, that means I found that spot during sound check, remembered where it was, and can bounce from it. You don't bounce too hard on some of them, otherwise your foot will go through that stinky floor. And the last one is politeness. For the love of Christ, be polite. I can't believe, I've seen people really be rude to sound people, lighting people. We won't say who it was we were on tour with, but we were on tour once with somebody who was a real asshole. And you know what asshole got? He got the lights turned up in the middle of his set, and he got screeching feedback to his monitors. I have friends who are in bands, and when I go to a club, they play that and said, oh, my friends were here. The people in the club will say, oh, they were so nice. They were so, yeah, seriously, be polite. Don't, people in clubs work hard. You ever see like Madonna screaming at that poor monitor guy? I would have hired that monitor guy right away from that. That's being a jerk. So yeah, so those are your 3 Ps: preparedness, promptness, politeness. I know it doesn't sound punk rock, but the other day somebody, Ice-T had said, about giving yourself some time, stopping. Sometimes you have to stop in order to move forward. Somebody said that doesn't sound very gangsta, and Ice-T said, well, who the fuck asked you, bitch? So it was absolutely great. So yeah, that's my take on that. And sorry if I took up too much of time with that. So Joe, I believe you're next.
I'd say the key to a great live performance is the audience. I think the audience is 85% of any show, in my opinion, because if you don't get the audience excited, it's a dull show. And they make the show for me anyway. The audience reaction is what makes it good. And it actually makes you play better to have an audience interested. So yeah, you have to be prepared and you have to know your songs, but the audience is the key to a live performance. That's what I say. Okay, that's it.
So Dan, other than copious amounts of amphetamines, what would you say is the key to a good live performance?
All of that, yeah, including that. No, I was going to say pretty much the same thing. I think it's like an energy in the audience, because there have been times, because with playing with you guys is vastly different than how I played with other bands, as far as like a discipline with practices and stuff, and being, and like you said, promptness on, for shows. And it's absolutely worth it. And I think there are times where you play a show and you're prepared and polite, and that people just are kind of like standing there, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, and you just keep going, and you keep like trying to do that energy, and then people are just kind of like, yeah. But then other times, like where you might think it's off, and then people really do kind of energize it, and then it's, Yeah, that's my answer.
And what's our term for when the audience doesn't move, they just stand there? We call that the Hall of Presidents. Right, Dean?
Yeah.
I was going to say one is practice, and we rehearse and we know the set inside and out. Two would be performance, another P word. We give like 110% when we go out there. We're focused on delivering the music or whatever. And I think, again, tied in with Joe, which Joe said, the audience, kind of being open to the audience and getting the feedback from them. And kudos to you, Rodney. You've got to deal with it up front there. You have to read the audience and figure out where their head is at, and you go with it, and 100% of the time you know exactly what needs to be done.
You know what?
The audience.
I wanted to add really quick. I think it's important to have the set down, so when you're playing the show, you're more open to improvising stuff, and you don't fuck it up as much because
you're prepared for the left ball, the left.
The odd things that always happen. You're prepared for what can
things
happen.
always go wrong.
That creates a really good chemistry between the four of us, because we practice so much that when we play live, we're able to slow down or like stop and do something else and go into how we do that.
See, I always feel if the audience doesn't move, I failed to do my job. I have one simple job. It's a sort of hype man job, and that is to get the audience up and moving. So if they're not moving, I have failed. I don't tend to think, the audience is late or whatever. I think, like, what am I doing wrong here? And I get to be I'll be very critical of that, and I'll go back and I'll rethink it. And I'll think, because again, people paid money, and if you're paying money and you go to see a band and they're not that great, well, the next time there are two bands in town and one of them that engaged you and one of them that didn't, then you're going to go see the band that engaged you.
Right. I think it's harder when we play festivals because people are there to see like any number of bands. I would say thank you to our fans, because when they come to see us, they're ready to have a good time. So
I would have liked to heard the Genitorturers answer that one. Again, I know we keep going back to Joe's love of the Genitorturers, but I'm like, what is the key? Well, you got to have the right nails to drive into your you are right there. So, all right. So I think we may be, it's like we've got like, I think 5 minutes left before the half-hour mark. So I think I'm going to move to recommendations. But if we move quickly on recommendations, we might come back and answer one last bonus question. So I'll loop back. All right, so recommendations. I get to go first this week. I'm keeping with my tradition of recommending something musical and then a piece of equipment. The musical thing I am recommending is the new, and sadly, it'll probably be the last album from Vancouver's Lee A. That is spelled L-I-E with, Joe, you're our scholar. Is the term diacritic, Mark, over the E? Is that the term for that? Our scholar says, I think it's diacritic. Well, anyway, that they're from Vancouver. If you saw us a few years ago when we did our West Coast tour, they opened up the first 3 shows. They did Vancouver, Seattle, and Portland, and they blew us off the stage every night. Fantastic band. Britt from that band has gone to Berlin to study electronic music. She's also in Sig Sally. So please, the album is called You Want It Real, and we do. And it's absolutely fantastic. Lee A, great band, and they will be missed. I think they played their last live show in a boxing ring, which was completely fitting because that band just sonic knocked you out. Like going on stage, we didn't want to go on stage after they were done. We're like, we're just gonna look kind of weak. So they fantastic band and wonderful people, and I hope that they do something in the future. And this week's equipment suggestion is this: the Uno Synth from the nice folks at IK Multimedia. This is actually made in Modena, not Modena, Pennsylvania, which is a lovely city, as Joe will testify, but Modena, Italy, where they make the Ferrari. Fantastic. It's basically a 2-oscillator synth, but you can get incredible sounds out of it. And as with a lot of stuff, it's really pretty inexpensive, but we recommend you can probably get these well under $200, and it'll make a sound. Now, these are capacitive keys, so just hook it up to your Key Pro and use that for your controller. I tried playing the capacitive keys, but They were weird for me. I thought, oh, I'll save space, but no, I wound up not doing it. But the sounds are fantastic, and there are lots of third-party sounds. It has all sorts of great built-in effects. It's a hybrid synth, so it's basically a whatever that's called type of engine mixed with digital, and so yeah. If you can, get one of these. They sound fantastic. They also make a drum machine. I think more people should have these. All right, thank you. Joe, you got recommendations?
I recommend, I don't know if you can see it, it's Sharpie. They come in, believe it or not, 49 unique colors you can buy now.
I didn't know
They've
that
actually
many
made many more different colors, but some of them are limited edition and they don't make them anymore. So if you see
You have
limited
a
edition
Sharpie
ones,
king size?
get them like the Mocha. But they come in different sizes too. They have the king size, the chisel, the very fine thin ones, and they have the normal fine ones. I like them as far as art pens go. I think they're a good value. I've tried other art pens like the Fabric Mate, which are also good, but they cost a lot more per. And for the amount, I mean, with 49 different colors, what can't you do? I don't know.
Is that what you do your drawings with?
That's pretty much exclusively what I've used for my drawings is Sharpie. I use the Tombow some for the shading, and sometimes the Fabric Mate.
Those are sharples.
Oh yeah, and I used to buy them at dollar stores and bargain places, and learned they're not actually Sharpies, and they have different. They're okay.
You look really close.
You can get Office Mate
Sharpie, but
that are
instead of an eye, they'll be like sharples.
They're not quite as good. Nothing actually smells as good as a Sharpie.
Joe's got little colors around his nose, you know.
They smell like fentanyl.
Not a day goes by when I don't use a Sharpie.
You smell enough Sharpies, you'll be following like fish around going, let's play some hacky sack. And look, all Sharpies become different colors if you smell them.
It's amazing how the colors
I was
are
joking.
bright,
Don't put
vibrant.
them near your nose.
I would recommend something actually I had heard a long time ago and then didn't hear it for a while, and I just discovered it again the other day. It's a Negativland album called No Business. It is amazing. I found it on an old hard drive because I was like looking for something in particular, and I was like, oh, let me see what's on this old hard drive, and there was all this music I hadn't heard in a while, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's really good. I think it's from 2005, but it's called No Business. It's really good. And then the equipment piece, copying off of Rodney, because I think that's a good idea. It's a kalimba, thumb piano. So this was a Father's Day gift years ago from the kids and Christy to me, and I keep collecting these little things that I find from the street sweeper that goes by, tines, like the little things that actually are basically these. And I'm gonna see if I can make one or try to do a mechanical like music box with the street sweeper, because it's basically the same thing. These little thin pieces of metal.
Very cool.
So yeah.
Love kalimbas.
I'm going to recommend two albums. One by a local band. There's a local band. I believe they're called Camino Sound, and they have a new record out called Western Excuses, and it's an instrumental band. Some of the members of Camino Sound used to be in a band called Twin Atlas, who I really like. So it's instrumental music. It's guitar, drums, bass, based, really good. And then another album that I got actually today for my birthday was the new album from Brian and Roger Eno called Mixing Colors. Many people probably don't know that Brian has a brother, Roger, who also does music. And the two of them work together. I think it's the first album they've done together in quite a number of years. And it's called Mixing Colors, and I would recommend you check that out. It's also instrumental. So I listen to a lot of instrumental
Basket Case.
What's that?
Is it like the movie Basket Case though, where he goes, like Brian Eno goes, here's my brother Roger, and he lifts his shirt and like,
I think his
love that
brother
movie,
Roger
Bad
was in
Movie.
the Genitorturers for a brief while. In the,
Yeah, he was in. He wrote "Cum Junkie." Oh, and see, he brought it all up.
Always comes back to that.
So those are my recommendations for this week.
Okay, gentlemen, we have successfully reached the end of another show.
We have 6 minutes left.
Woo-hoo.
We have 6
We have
minutes.
6 minutes.
You want to answer one more question?
How do we have 6 minutes? I thought I got
know, mine
9:30
says-
something on
It says right.
Yeah, we have 6
That's
minutes
the
left.
Zoom limit. That's not the show limit.
Let's do a lightning round. Lightning round.
I tried to
Oh,
do the show like a half hour.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'll do one there.
wasn't one of
All
the
right, bonus
questions
question.
edit these down?
All right, bonus question. Yeah, that was one of the questions. Okay, yeah. That if I give the answer to that, it's just going to be another 20 minutes of me cursing. Like, edit this, you son of a bitch. Okay, here we go. This is from this just because this guy's got a great handle. The Barroom Poet. By the way, if you people think these go too long, remember I tried to stop it. This is from the Barroom Poet. It says, concerning the Methodist coloring book video shoot, this is one of the instances that the video enhances the experience of an already great song. I don't know if I call Methodist coloring book a great song, but it's no cum junkie. Did the band storyboard all the lo-fi effects, or was that farmed out? That is the mighty Adam Bernstein, who directed the bulk of our videos. And when you say lo-fi effects, we have a little story for you. Yeah, I think Dan may have heard this story a few times, told by us in the van. What happened was MTV had a set of ridiculous rules. If you can see them imposed on the Beastie Boys when they did the Sabotage video. It basically as to how they could hold their fingers like guns, stuff like that. And we blew up a church, and that a little model church gets blown up, and we submitted it, and MTV was like, no, you can't blow up churches. And this was before like Norwegian black metal when that became a national pastime. So they imploded the church. And MTV was like, okay,
Adam just ran the film backwards. And
ran it backwards.
Wasn't that David Deneen that did those effects for us?
I don't know who did them.
David did the he created David Deneen, who is a friend of mine, a friend of all of ours, lives here in Philly, is a genius with makeup, and he created Frank and Elvis for the Big Time Operator video. And David has a really
robbing.
I thought he hooked up the forehead. I might be wrong.
He might have hooked up the explosive. He's a multi-talented guy and a really nice person. He used to have when you went to his house on Pine Street, his old place, his living room was all what they call pickled punks. Pickled punk is a fake fetus in a jar, and that was like walls and walls of them. So yeah, that was just like I say, a genius. When he did the Frank and Elvis makeup, I actually walked down the street in New York City dressed like that, and nobody noticed. But the people in the neighborhood where we filmed that video, oh, they did notice, and we had to tell them we were filming. So they wouldn't call the cops. We were filming an ad for a cereal called Frank and Elvis. And one woman goes, Frank and Elvis, and I wouldn't eat it. Yeah, they believed it. And there were some graves that had been broken into there, and David Deneen wanted to get a good look at what the bodies look like after. Yeah, he's a really great guy. He also does saber fighting. Interesting person.
All right.
Did that kill enough time?
Yeah, I think that you answered the question. So that was a great bonus question there.
Yeah, do you guys remember anything about that shoot?
I remember maggots.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. Dario Argento. Oh my God. Oh, that's okay. I should tell that. So Adam Bernstein, I'd shown him. I'm a big fan of Dario Argento's work, so I showed him this absolutely ridiculous documentary about Dario Argento, in which they show Dario Argento and Adam for the work that he would do later on America's Most Wanted. I believe he did some episodes of that. He did some episodes of Oz. And he took Dario's thing, which is in a Dario Argento film, whenever you see somebody get stabbed, that's Dario's hand. So if you're watching America's Most Wanted or Oz and you see a stabbing and there's a glove on the hand or something, that's Adam. So yeah, it's Adam's hand. But throughout the film, Dario Argento does things like talks about how happy he is to have all these maggots bred and all this, and you know how it's spun with the blood coming out. And at the end of it, and why do you make films, Dario? And he looks into the camera. I'm not lying. And says, I make films because I want to be loved. So yeah, you get a chance, see the world of Dario Argento. I cannot hype it enough. But yes, Adam as a director was super impressed with that.
Thank you, Adam Bernstein.
Thank you, Adam Bernstein. Yeah, check out his work. He made a film with Debbie Harry.
And it's Pat.
It's what?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Pat.
Yeah. Oh, it's I have the script.
Some
for this
episodes of Better Call Saul.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. And he was also David Duchovny's roommate at Princeton. David Duchovny from the X-Files was Adam Bernstein's roommate. So there you go. See, there's trivia. You may not have won it, but we gave it to you anyway. So aren't you glad this thing didn't end 5-10 minutes ago? Who is this snotty bastard that says that I should edit these videos down? Who do you, no one ever goes to the Louvre and they see the Mona Lisa because it always looks small to everybody, and they don't look at it and go, "Oh, it's so small," but it could be smaller. They could have edited that.
Burp Reynolds. Burp Reynolds said.
You're answering his question, whether you edit it down or not. You're answering in that, so that's a bonus question.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah,
we have
another
a minute
question.
left,
Yeah.
so thank you all.
All right.